Welcome back to The Watch. And Nathan, the saving grace of the gaming industry, Stellar Blade, the game that's going to give gamers what they want, has been censored.
Oh, no. I feel so sorry for you. What a shame.
Why am I sounding so dejected there, Nathan?
Stellar Blade is interesting, because I've been completely honest with you. I don't really care for it. Yeah. I think it's very... it's for a particular audience.
It is.
And it's not for me. And so when people complain about, oh no, it's been censored by putting extra cloth over, nice big jiggly cleavage, I'm like, boo-hoo. Like,
I get where you're coming from, because in the same sense, that doesn't interest me as a gamer. But there's a principle at risk here, which I think is important to try and defend. Now, when I also want to just caveat and clear up, right? It isn't the game developer that has been censoring this.
It's been Sony.
It has been Sony, okay? And so there is a couple of important things that need, I guess, to be, one, made clear, but also to talk about the principle, the actual underlying principle. And the major battle that's been going on here, which is related to Gamergate 2, and this is the continued kind of evolution of it, basically is stop trying to push subversive political ideologies in games and making games reflect a specific vision or lens. Specifically, the whole censoring of female attractiveness, right? And it's not necessarily censoring, but in this case it is. But in terms of other games, making female characters just look like men and making them really ugly, all because there are certain activists that think it's offensive that men are attracted to attractive women. Specifically, they're offended that men are attracted to attractive women. And that's the male gaze, and that's bad, and that's sexist. And that's when I'm like, even though, sometimes games can go too far for me, I actually agree. It's like, hang on, you can't tell people what they should or should be allowed to be attracted to. I thought, isn't that going too far? You would think the libertarian argument, and by the way, I'm not on board with libertarianism, but the argument usually is live and let live. Let people, love what they want and live how they want. Except when it's, they disagree with it. Then not only will they try and shame and tell people they're awful, misogynist, sexist, pigs, whatever, for doing that, they will then tell the game developer companies everything, you must, not do this because it's sexist, and the consulting companies, companies like Sweet Baby Inc. and the people that are involved in it, they get on board. And that's where this is all going. So the censorship that's been happening with Stellar Blade, right, seems to be very much in the vein of men bad for liking sexy women. And the censorship seems really odd and weird as well.
I mean, people say it's censorship, but I still see, obviously there's slight changes to things, but it isn't overtly...
It's still overtly sexual outfit. Yeah, that's what my point is, you haven't really solved any of the issues.
They've toned it down by, half, a decimal.
Decimal.
Yeah.
And it achieves mostly nothing apart from getting to see some cleavage. And there's examples. I think we need to show some of the examples of the censorship.
Yes, because there's been two things that have been censored. There's been some outfits, but there's also an environmental thing where a journalist reviewed the game and there was graffiti on the wall that said hard.
But specifically hard.
And then there was a shop sign with R.
So here is some of the examples of censorship. It's a bit pixelated and can't see. But that's what I mean. It seems so pointless. What are you trying to achieve? Like this one. I can't even really see what got censored.
Is there more cloth in between the lace? That's what I mean, though. It's so... If you didn't see the original picture, you would think that's still scantily clad woman.
So this one actually shows some of the things more obviously.
Yes.
So what you see here with this outfit, there's they decided that boob window is that's crossing everything else, perfectly fine, but that's just too far. They have to do something. To me, this is what is the point? It's What are you clutching your pearls at? The outfit is already overtly sexual and revealing. And it's like, that's too far. I'm going to cover up that window right there. That cleavage not allowed. I don't get it.
It would make sense to me if it was like a sweatshirt. Like they had this and then she changed into like a polo shirt or sweatshirt. Like they just hid everything entirely. But this, I'm like, you basically can still see everything. Like there's a tiny bit of skin missing. But guess what? You have the original. You just use your imagination.
Yeah, but this is the thing, right? Then they might say, well, we've only done so little, so why are you bothered about it? And that goes both ways. Right?
Exactly.
If it's so little, it's so consequential, why did you bother to censor it?
There's no point.
It's bonkers. And this one here, right, is like this cleavage. I mean, that's too far. The legs, she probably got, showing off a lot of rear end in this outfit, but that's the cleavage is too far. Like, I've seen worse cleavage on outfits at, like, those award shows and crap like that. Like, this is...
Again, the double standard they have here. It's like, I disagree with both outfits, both at award shows. I think they're way too
far,
way too revealing, and the same with this game stuff. It's like, well, doesn't matter either one. I'm kind of like, man, if my son was playing that, I'd kind of go,
yeah, this isn't the game I would let my boys play.
Yeah.
Again, we're more conservative leaning over here, but the principle about trying to, restrict, well, one, it's already so far that it's pointless, right? But then also trying to, say, oh, this is clearly sexist, too sexist, and, guys, they shame on you for wanting to look at attractive women and stuff like that. I think every guy should, be perfectly happy to enjoy a pretty woman, right? And the image of a pretty woman, that's their freedom of speech, all that stuff, right? So the game developer themselves, right, they're not doing the censorship. It's Sony doing it. And one of the other issues that I also, think there's a principle at play here is about hypocrisy, okay? And Grums has been pointing this out. There are a lot of other games that have revealing stuff in it that they have, Sony, perfectly fine have in. Why have they been targeting Stellar Blade like this?
I mean, you can look at it two ways. I would also think that I think Sony has more of a stake in this game because it's an exclusive for them with PC as well. Where other studios, like I think Square Enix has like Final Fantasy games where that's their property, they kind of own it. Then there's also the other side, which Shad, you can probably get into more with the culture war stuff.
Sony, I think, just are dumb.
Yes.
I think this is more stupidity with perhaps a couple of people in the company that are more, activist, mindset, trying to feed it like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that, and the people who are making the actual calls being completely uninformed about it. It's like, oh, we better do that, we don't want to upset certain groups and stuff. I think it more comes down to ignorance over... When I say malice, I do think there are people in these companies that are absolutely activists. Of course, they get fed guidance by the consulting companies, which are just activist groups, basically. But the actual people at the heads of these companies ultimately do just want to make money.
Yeah.
They're just so misguided that they don't understand what gamers actually want, right? And so there has been... when I say backlash, people have been upset. The game company was actually saying that it's going to be uncensored. And then upon release, it looks to be censored. And that has annoyed a lot of people, right? And some sentiments have been then saying, return the game, cancel pre-orders, do all those things, which I agree with Grums, I think is the wrong plan, okay? Because it isn't the actual game company doing this, okay? It's Sony. And so Grums has actually seen this as a point where we might be able to make some change in the gaming industry to push back against the woke DEI kind of infestation that's because even though this is a small element, like this tiny bit of censoring, it isn't much, right? it might be because it's small that there might be ability to push back on it. And so there's that. And remember, this is just a sign of a much larger problem, okay, where they... game companies have literally said, they've admitted to this. It's crazy, but it's like they've actually admitted to this. One of the reasons they're making so many women ugly in games is because they don't want to upset trans people, which is a bit odd. And we have a video breaking that down, because why would that actually upset trans people? I thought trans people wanted to, represent as the other gender. But they actually have that in there. And it goes really bad for making classic characters like Mary Jane looking very different to how they should look, and then shaming gamers for liking pretty women. So it goes pretty far into the weeds of ideology in regards to extremist feminism, DEI, woke ideology, and this is a small part that is indication of a much larger problem. So if we could win here, it might cause some actual pushback against this. And so Mark Kern, Grums, has seen that and is latching onto it, and he thinks this is a place where we could actually make some change, send a message through to Sony that you're on the wrong page here. Okay, so let's read something that he has said here. He says, X has no room for subtlety and nuance, but let's try. The fight against DEI and ESG and Bridge is a long-term fight. And so diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG is the economic, social governance, fund that basically BlackRock saying we will fund, invest in game development, movies and stuff like that if you tick these woke checkboxes, which has been really influenced games in a very negative way for being basically just propaganda for woke ideology, like the Saints Row game, right? Bridge is another reframing of DEI, basically. That's what they're trying to do now that they've been getting called out with Sweet Baby and everything, is just to reframe everything and keep doing exactly what they've been doing. So it is a long-term fight. And so everyone fights, nobody quits is my motto. But when that plan meets reality, it's everyone fights to the best of their ability. Not everyone can risk being me, putting my real face out there, getting cancelled and death threats, and so on. There are millions of you out there who have to fight anon. And guess what? We get that. That doesn't make you a coward. It doesn't mean you sold out and aren't fighting as hard as you can. And you will make mistakes. And when you do, the important part is to hang together and support each other. The other side does, and this is a source of their strength. And the people who are pushing this woke propaganda are very organized in their agenda. Shift Up, which is the company making Stellar Blade, is fighting to the best of their ability to give you what you want. They choose to make games that gamers want, against the tide of DEI ESG that wants to make this type of game impossible to make. This is why the principle is important for me, right? Even though it isn't my type of game, right? I don't want, artistic expression to be censored through an ideological lens. And I don't want, gamers to be fed things that they don't want and then to be shamed and other things like that. Because even though it isn't the type of game I would necessarily play, though the gameplay looks friggin' awesome and I like the swordplay combat, so maybe I would, right? But it does go too far into the sexualization for me, and that's because I'm a very conservative Christian in that regard, right? I do feel there is a legitimate attack against beauty and the celebration of the idyllic, aspirational goal. And for me, having aspirational, idyllic depictions in superheroes, and this goes from everything from Superman, Spider-Man, He-Man, and everything like that, only inspired me to try and become stronger, work out and get better, get fit, and all those things, right? And so I feel it's important having those aspirational things, but also just the escapism fun. When I make an avatar, I'm making the most buff, ripped guy version of myself or a pretty woman, And it's because it's like when you play something, you want something that's pretty to look at, even though sometimes it can go too far. But the principle I'm actually in agreement with, and there's an important thing to try and push back against that's happening. And so Shift Up is an example of a company that's giving gamers what they want. And the DEI ESG is the type of stuff that will make it impossible Like, if they had to bow to the woke standards, this game wouldn't have been made in the way that it is, at least, in a big way. And they're pushing back against the tide of AAA that only wants bland, safe games for the masses. They made some bad marketing choices and either shipped outfits they like better or silently censored by Sony. In the end, that is less important than the overall win that we are getting here in this long-term battle. They are fighting to the best of their ability, and they also make mistakes. Meanwhile, companies like Games Workshop and Pokemon Go are actively fighting against you by their own choice. Shift Up is not the same. They are an ally. And this is a very, very good point he's making here. Mm-hmm. Pokemon Go, we've covered that recently. What they did to those avatars was unbelievable. It's like... And there was nothing objectionable in the Pokemon Go avatars. But they literally thought that the feminine form was offensive, as well as the very concept of gender, right? And the fact that they find that offensive, to me, I find that as an affront to truth, basically, and normal standards of human biology, right? Okay, so Shift Up is, they are an ally saying, but as I've said many times on my streams and interviews about Stellar Blade, this is a huge win in the battle against the AAA Drek. But in any war, you make mistakes and you take casualties. In fact, it's impossible to win without taking big risks, enduring casualties and losing many battles. Stellar Blade is a fantastic game for its gameplay, and it flies in the face of our DEI ESG enemies for its outfits and outright sexuality. But those enemies are trying to channel their anger against the censorship mistakes in Stellar Blade to discredit and mock the true cause, the fight against wokeness. Don't let them. Support Shift Up, band together, because they are an ally and have delivered a huge win in this long-term fight. And so saying, don't cancel your pre-orders of the game, right? Mm-hmm. This is the type of company that actually needs support. As for the mistakes, the marketing censorship flub, the best we can do is point it out and try and fix it. Now, it mentions a petition, and I will talk about it because in the context is saying the petition is just that act and is taking for granted that people know what it is. So what he has done, right? Grums has huge experience in game development. He knows how game development companies work, how they work. And I was listening to him on Side Scrollers talking about this, that emails sent to developers don't really have any real effect. It's just gets lost in the sludge. But physical letters do actually get some attention, especially when people walk in and hand in a letter. And so Grums is actually suggesting real actionable things people can do if you want to push back against that. And the first thing he's trying to do is start with a petition. Mm-hmm. You can get a petition that gets a lot of people signed on, and then a report of the petition of some type gets delivered to the company in person, right? And when the company in person, Sony. That's the target that they're trying to push back against there, right? Not the actual game developer company itself. It's Sony that they're doing it. And so Grums has a petition, and his target is to try and get, I think, about 100,000 signatures on. And that would send a message, all right? Especially if this is like 100,000 potential customers. Those are big numbers. And so, yeah, go sign the petition. This is something that can actually help. And so he says the petition is just that. Acting as a consumer voice to try and fix the PR blunder. We don't know what is stopping them. Creative vision being different than consumer expectation, Sony pulling the strings. The petition may fail too, but in the end we will still get our win either way, and it's a very big win. Stop making enemies out of allies who make mistakes. Stop blackpilling when they don't agree with you 100%. You are only letting our enemies win while they stick together no matter what. I do think they eat their own, especially when someone steps out of line of their dogma, but they do organise way more than people trying to fight against them. Time to adopt tactics from them and stay strong together. I have your back through your anon and your mistakes. I ask you to do the same for all our allies. And he has a link to the petition. So very well said. And Grums is doing some really solid work, right? So Grums has this tagline, Free Stellar Blade, and it has points of action that will help achieve this. And so he DM'd the creator directly. So he has a message and has also spoke with the game company, and so he's done that. Grum's unbanned. Check. He was banned somewhere, apparently.
It happens.
Yeah. Email to Shift Up. He's done that as well. This is an interesting thing that is saying if you want to send a message to Sony, instead of cancelling your Stellar Blade order, cancel your PSN Plus account. So PlayStation Network?
The memberships.
The memberships, right? That would send a message. Okay? And so if you do want to send a message that this type of cancellation is not on, that you want game companies to feel free to develop games that gamers actually want, that's free of woke propaganda, DI and stuff like that, cancel your PlayStation membership if you have one. That would send a message. Get hashtag FreeStellarBlade trending, which means quote tweet, support, reply, and then petition in progress. Nearly at 50k, all right. Making progress. And so those are some things that you can do. And Grums is not giving up, is at the front of this fight, and mate, good on ya. And this is an interesting part of this whole Evolution Gaming Gate 2 thing. I think Stellar Blade is important in terms of having the freedom for games to be made the way games want, free of ideological checkboxes and stuff like that. And I do think it is a win. I agree with him. And the game company isn't the enemy, it's actually Sony. Even Sony's not necessarily the enemy because they're just idiots, they don't know.
It's probably just office politics happening in there as well.
Yeah, right? And that seems to be a lot of the case in a lot of these companies. There is an infestation of ideologues, okay, that are trying to push things, and they seem to be a lot in the... I guess the hiring and the human. What's the side?
At the corporate side of.
There's the corporate side, and then there's the human resources
HR,
department seems to be infected with a lot of these types of people, and also people hired for ideological reasons. Well, so they're there, but a lot of the people at the heads, right, of the companies, just their money, they want to make money. They're so disconnected, which is so bizarre to me, because you'd think, people making stuff, you'd want to know about the product and the consumer base and the fans that you're serving, when they're so often they're just completely devoid corporate kind of, corporate culture kind of people that are completely separate and devoid of what's actually happening, and they don't know what's going on, and therefore they can get manipulated and misled a lot by activists and stuff. And that seems to be the case with a lot of higher up game development stuff, as well as Hollywood. But one of the answers is try and get the message through, because I don't think they're seeing a lot of this on Twitter. I don't think they care. They're too busy schmoozing up at their really expensive, parties and whatnot and things, basically. But all right, so there's an important update in what's happening with the Stellar Blade thing, and the censorship itself is a bit of a murky thing. It's not the company itself doing the censorship, but it is a big disappointment for gamers who were supporting it, that felt they were supporting a truly censorship-free, censorship-free thing. So we'll keep watching what's going on and keeping you updated, because that's what we do. Stay on watch.